because it's just what we would have wanted to do, David. There have been times when all of us have been in this room with David for nefarious purposes of various kinds, and we have been conniving to do good things, and many good things have been done because of that. But David, thank you for your leadership and friendship for all these years, and this is a rightful thing for us to celebrate tonight. Let us pray. Good Lord, we thank you that we have ways of marking time and doing it well on nights like tonight. Thank you for the friendships across the ages that are represented around these tables and in this room. For the ways that we have striven together to seek to advance the heritage that has been given to us and that we wish to pass on to others. For the successes and the failures both, for what we've learned in them, but mostly for the people that have stood beside us throughout. Tonight we especially thank you for David, for all of his courage, for being the person that he has been, willing to be a lightning rod at times and to organize us and to do whatever has been necessary to uphold the cause of Christ as he best understood it. For those in Texas Baptist Committed who continue this work and who have organized this evening, we thank you. For this food, we ask your blessing, and we ask that you be glorified as David is honored, even now. Amen.
Bruce is in the Are they going to push church out in 2012?
Thank you very much, Dr. Mason. We are grateful to you. We have met here many times, and we're always in your debt for the privilege of gathering and doing that. A lot of good things have happened and have come because of that. In Texas, we're still free. You're part of the reason for that, and Wilshire, of course, is one of those stalwart institutions that always blesses us. We're grateful. I bring you greetings and welcome from Texas Baptist Committee, the Executive Board. We have been through interesting times of late, and I don't know who is a part of TBC and who isn't. But my assumption is that most of you are. If you are not, I hope you will join. You certainly will have opportunity tonight. And I hope you will pray for us that we will be led of God to do whatever we need to do to keep Baptist principles important, Baptist distinctives alive in Texas, and Baptist freedom a part of what we are all about. We're here tonight to honor one, of course, who led us in that charge to keep Baptists free. And I want to recognize him and his family, all of those who are part of the Currie family. Would you stand? David and all of your family who can. To know that we love you, we're proud of you, we're grateful for all you have done. I have said to interesting people from time to time, if it weren't for God's usage of David Currie in leading us in the charge against fundamentalism and the takeover of Texas Baptist, none of us would be sitting around this table at this time. And I believe that to have been true every time I said it, and those who were with me agreed. They didn't always agree with David, but they agreed with that statement. They said that. Another one I want to recognize tonight is a dear friend, a friend of mine, a friend of Texas Baptist Committee, a friend of Baptists who value freedom and Baptist thinkers everywhere, and that is Bob Stevenson from Oklahoma, who is a part of the board of Texas Baptist Committee and has supported us, and by his generosity has made this gathering possible tonight. Bob, lift your thank you very much. hope you have been and will continue to pray for Bob. He's been through some health issues and is much better now. And we are grateful to God that he's able to be with us tonight. God bless you. Thank you for being here. It's good to be here among our friends. I think I heard somebody say, this is different. I like nearly everybody here.
Thank you, Clyde. Was the operative word nearly there? I want to first say a personal word of thanks to George Mason and Wilshire Baptist Church, and I'm thankful that I'm not going to get a scolding now. I always like to avoid that, but really a personal word of thanks to Wilshire and George for hosting us tonight. Joanna and I have been members here since 2004, and this church is, I can't begin to tell you what a blessing it is in my life and in our lives. Thank you too to Wilshire chef John Yost and his staff who have prepared this wonderful feast for us tonight. Everybody getting enough food? They always make eating here at Wilshire a special time of food and fellowship. In case you're wondering, the young man working the camcorder over here, you know, I asked him, I said, he was going to wear jeans. I said, I'm going to recognize you, you know, and he said, oh, great. But anyway, this is my son, Travis, and he's going to be taping this for us tonight. This summer, he has graduated from college, gotten married, and found gainful employment. You know what that means to parents. So, his wife, Christy, is right here, sitting here at the table with my wife, Joanna, on the other side. And we're glad they were able to come and help out tonight. Our board has asked me to give you a brief update on TBC, but first I have a few more brief thank yous. First, I want to express my appreciation to Clyde Glazner and his committee who have planned this dinner. Michael Bell and I have met with Clyde and his committee several times. You would be surprised how many breakfasts at IHOP and Cracker Barrel it takes to plan a dinner like this. But it's been great working with them, and I really appreciate what Clyde and his committee have done. Thank you, Clyde. I also want to thank Steve Wells, who's seated right back here next to the tree. After David retired 2 years ago, our board reorganized and Steve Wells was elected chair. He helped guide our board through those months after David retired as we were working on the question of where do we go from here. And I can't say thank you enough for Steve's hard work and sure hand in guiding us through that transition. Thank you, Steve. Finally, thank you to Michael Bell. Michael became chair at mid-year last year and has been tireless in pushing us forward and carrying out our mission at TBC. And when I took this position in January, I knew I needed the continuity of Michael Bell's leadership, and so did our organization. At a very critical time when we were attempting to reconnect with our supporters and to reassert ourselves in pursuit of our mission. So at our annual board meeting down in Houston in January, before Michael had a chance to object, I asked our board to re-elect him for another year as chair, and they did that unanimously on the spot. Michael has continued to work tirelessly for TBC and has given me guidance and support that has been critical in my work here. Thank you, Michael. Phil Lineberger is our vice chair and will succeed Michael as chair in January 2012. Phil wasn't able to be here tonight, but I've had to call on Phil several times this year, and he's always been ready with the information and assistance that I've needed, and he's going to be a great asset to us as chair next year. We want to take this opportunity to give you a brief update on TBC. Our board and I are building on the foundation laid by David Currie and others in ways that meet the challenges of today's Baptist environment. The threat to Texas Baptist is less visible than it was 20 years ago, but it's just as real. Ken Camp's recent article in The Standard about TBC led with Michael Bell's question: if we're walking along the same path, why are there 2 state conventions in Texas relating to the Southern Baptist Convention? Michael's point was that we're obviously not walking along the same path. The Baptist General Convention of Texas affirms and respects the authority of the local church, and the Southern Baptist of Texas Convention does not. Churches relating to the BGCT are free to give to the SBC, the CBF, or elsewhere, or a combination thereof. Whereas the Southern Baptist of Texas Convention expressly restricts its affiliated churches to giving only to the Southern Baptist Convention. Let me say clearly that Texas Baptist Convention supports the right of each church to give to the Southern Baptist Convention or the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship, or both. Local church autonomy is a bedrock Baptist principle that must be respected. The Southern Baptist of Texas Convention draws churches away from the BGCT and then restricts their freedom. Carl Fickling is director of the BGCT's pastorless church team, which provides pastorless, where are you, Carl? There you go, there's Carl. Which provides pastorless churches with the information and support they need to make informed decisions. The work is daunting, and TBC works with Carl to give him and his team any support we can. Our board considers one of our key roles to be that of a resource to churches seeking pastors, to inform them about candidates who will respect and protect their freedom, and about the track record of candidates whom they are already considering, and whether those candidates might actually threaten the church's freedom. Along the same line, we inform Texas Baptists about the qualifications of candidates for BGCT office and encourage attendance at the annual meeting. TBC also educates Texas Baptists about what it means to be a Baptist. The Baptist movement will survive only if Baptists know our heritage. We've produced a series of Baptist Briefs videos on our TBC website, over 70 videos, each lasting from 2 to 3 minutes, focusing on Baptist history and principles. I've heard from professors in our Texas Baptist universities who are using these videos in their classes, as well as pastors using them in their churches. In fact, beyond Texas, earlier this week, I received a request from a pastor in North Carolina for a DVD of our Baptist Briefs videos to use with 2 study groups that they're going to have in their church this fall on the subject of identity. So these have proven valuable, and the Baptist History and Heritage Society has recognized and recommended our Baptist Briefs videos and provides a link to them from its website. Last fall, we started the Texas Baptist Committed blog, and in May, we began publishing a weekly electronic newsletter called the TBC Midweek Baptist Roundup. I'm encouraged by people who have emailed me or called me since we began the roundup to ask for help in their pastor searches, as well as those who simply say, "We're glad TBC is still here. We need you." Finally, we will have a TBC breakfast at the BGCT in Amarillo this year. We're not quite ready with an announcement on the speaker, but we expect to be able to announce it soon in the roundup. Our breakfast will be Tuesday morning, October 25th at the Civic Center, where the convention will be meeting. It will be over by 8 a.m., just in time for you to get to the Igniting Hope in the Community, did I say that right, Steve? Igniting Hope in the Community session, right there at the Civic Center, kicking off the ministry opportunities for that morning. Very convenient. Come and have breakfast with us at, yes, 6:30, but that's so that you can get to these ministry opportunities by 8. So come and have breakfast with us and then go do missions. It's what Baptists do. Eat, fellowship, hear the word, and then go and do. Thank you. Michael?
Good evening. We, first of all, I want to add my voice to those who have already said to you, George, and to Wilshire, thanks for opening your doors and hosting this. This is a good thing. We appreciate it. Want to recognize all of our current TBC board members. I have the privilege of working with some awesome people. And if you all you're a current member of the board, I want you to stand where you are, wait better, so something. Won't you join me? And I want you to remain standing. And then if you've ever served as a board member of TBC, I want you to stand with them. certainly we want to also not only thank our current board members, and certainly we appreciate those of you who have served before. I need to say this about Bill Jones. Bill Jones is a gift, and he has worked he's been unrelenting in working in behalf of Texas Baptists, and he has given up himself, time, energy, the whole package. And we have a blog, and we're on Facebook. We're getting ready in our annual convention, as Bill has already mentioned, to have our breakfast and to have a booth. So we are up and running, and certainly I want you to help me show appreciation to our associate executives. And Joanna, thank you for just lending him to us.
She's the one making the real thing.
Certainly, we're grateful. Also, we have several friends who could not be here, and so it is my responsibility to just share with you, bless you, the comments that we've received. By the way, Phil Lineberger would be here tonight, but he texted me at the last minute. He could not make it because a member of his, an elderly member, fell and broke her neck. And I did not get word whether or not her condition, what it is currently, but certainly we understand why Phil could not be here. Be sure to lift up Phil and that ministry in your prayers. Brent Walker says this to David. David has been a faithful member of the Baptist Joint Committee Board of Directors for the past decade. We'll miss his passion for Baptist freedom and religious liberty for all of God's children. We at the BJC wish David all the best and God's blessing in his future service to the kingdom. That's from Brent Walker. Jimmy Allen writes, no one in Texas Baptist life has done more to help the convention make the convention Baptist and relevant. Sorry to miss this event. That's from Jimmy Allen. James Dunn writes, David Currie deserves far more recognition than he has received for the magnificent job he did in staying the tide of mindless hostility. Russell Dilday, Dr. Dilday writes, I looked up definitions of the word curried and found that one definition of curry is to beat or flog. I guess we could say, as we honor David, that the fundamentalist effort to take over Texas was gratefully curried. We're all grateful for the leadership David gave during those challenging days. Dr. Dilday. Dick Maples sent this message. Mary Jo and I wish we could be there to honor David and to say thank you for all he has done to keep the BGCT free from fundamentalism. Sister Painter writes, and I'm going to read all of this. Dear friends, although I cannot be there tonight, I want to share in this special event honoring David Currie. To the chorus of those expressing gratitude, please add sincerest thanks personally from Roger and me, and collectively from the Christian Life Commission. It is heartwarming to recall the achievements and important work of David Currie and Texas Baptist Committee. Thank you, David, for being a receptive and energetic leader. Through the unique combination of gifts and opportunities, God called you toward a vision for the Texas Baptist family that was born from the root of love for your own family and friends. We're grateful that you rallied and protected Texas Baptist as if we were your own. Thank you
for the tireless efforts to reach out to pastors and lay leaders, men and women across the state. You found free and faithful Baptists and introduced many of us to each other like something of a cross between an eHarmony matchmaker and a modern day circuit riding preacher. We're glad we are better friends, rather, of our faith and better friends to each other as a fruit of your labor. Thank you for honesty. Thanks for knowing why freedom is worth fighting for. Thanks for being willing to engage in debate, public and private, on behalf of a calling and vision of God's kingdom larger than your organization, your church, or even your Texas-sized personality. Thanks for enthusiasm. The enlivening of our faith with passion and commitment is of God. There is no way to be contagious for his kingdom without it. So thanks for the legacy of standing up, standing out, and standing on the promises. There is a backbone of strength within our common Texas Baptist story because of your work and dedication to God's call in your life. I think God seeks out the willing among his faithful to encourage a backbone of strength in his people. We thank you for being one of the spinal prophets for our time. With gratitude and hope of generous grace for the days ahead, Susie Painter. Isn't that wonderful? And then we have from Kelly Petty. Kelly writes, we would love to be there, and I tried to figure out a way. Thankful for all that you have done, David, and thanks for being a friend to John. Certainly, we're grateful to you, David. It was Charles Wade who introduced me to a cast of characters. and the biggest character of all was David Currie. And David and I traveled, and we talked, and we argued, and we talked, and we hugged. And I remember, and you all don't know this, I remember when I was up for president of our convention, and I had an opponent, and I believe it was you, Lance, who had your father, and he was crying. He was hurt. He was hurt. And he said, Michael, and I told David, I know your heart, and I know your love for me and my family, my wife Mary Louise, and for Texas Baptist most of all. And somehow we won the day. And David, we're grateful to you. Come on, let's give him a hand. I love you, man. Now, while everyone is smiling and happy, it is my responsibility, it devolves upon my shoulders to remind you that at the table that you have an envelope. And that envelope, it says Texas Baptist Committed. I've already written my checks, and I'm sure that I hope that you will join me. And if you would do this, I guess, Bill, if we could just leave them at the table, huh? Sure. We can do that. Let's leave them at the table. And once you've done that, thank you so very much. We have personal reflections on David Currie, and you see it there in your program, and we're going to go in that order: Ron Cook, Bill Jones, Charles Wade, Lance Currie. Okay?
Just occurred to me that if Russell Dilday and Phil Weinberg had been here, this would have turned into a roast, so maybe it's good.
Might be what it needs to turn into.
Well, not for me. I appreciate the opportunity to share these words. I thought a lot about them, and they stick fairly close to my notes for that reason. We've been asked to be concise, so I'm going to follow the 5 B's of 4 people making remarks. Be brief, brother, be brief, and I'll get right to it. We do have an opportunity tonight to talk about a very special time in Baptist history and a very special person in our friend David Currie. My comments may be just a little bit of an overreach, but I make no apology for that. I think anything less would be inappropriate and in some ways inaccurate. I'm urging David to write his memoirs. One, because he needs to write his own story. And secondly, he may be the only one still with us who can give a detailed account of how we preserve freedom in Texas Baptist life, describing the roles of major players, the events of both public and private that kept Texas Baptist life from fundamentalism. Now, there are several in this room who could write a wonderful story, but David stood at the center of a significant chapter of our lives, and one that is pretty quickly fading from public memory, and that concerns me. David had a key role in preserving the Baptist ethos in Texas, and we're here tonight to finally say thank you to David for your service. What did David Currie do? I had people ask me for years and years and years, what does David Currie do? And I was going to answer that tonight in my own words. But in the interest of time, I'm going to use David's. I asked him to put something together recently, and here's the way David said it. 1, we clearly understood the nature of fundamentalism. They defined the rules as winner take all, no compromise. We had clear evidence of their agenda as they destroyed SBC seminaries. Therefore, as Winfred Moore often said, count the votes, David, count the votes. 2, we made a wise decision to be a public organization, allowing lay people to find us and support us. Other states tried to fight the battle behind the scenes through pastors organizing only. This would not work. We also had a large group of laity, educated through 8 state Baptist universities, who loved their schools and did not want to lose academic freedom. Our mailing list grew from 2,000 in 1992 to over 25,000 in 2000, or later than that. Number 3, we gave these laypersons responsibility through the advisory board, and they responded. They organized when their pastors wouldn't. 4, we had a key pastor leadership that was willing to be publicly involved, and they held dinners and spoke at the meetings. Number 4, we had good strategic relationships in the Baptist building. David said it another way, but I'm going to put it that way. We had very generous leading donors, and at times in some years 2,000 people who would give to Texas Baptist Committee. 7, we developed a good organization with 3 regions, 22 zones, and associational leaders. We studied past turnout, we set goals, sometimes 2 messengers were the goal. Number 8, our agenda was totally opposite of the fundamentalists. We sought influence in order to include everyone. Fundamentalists sought influence in order to exclude persons. Number 9, we left no lies unchallenged. And number 10, finally, we had a director in me that loved what I did, didn't view it as a job, but a calling, and didn't care what anyone thought, and had no fear and tons of energy. Yes, we did, David, thanks to you. That's what happened. And God bless you for that. I got a couple more remarks. How did David Currie accomplish so much? There are some people who might think that David had lightning in a bottle, but that sounds magical, and it was much more profound and powerful than that. The reason that David could do so much is that he worked with a huge amount of capital. And by that, I mean trust capital. Almost all of us were there. As I look across this room, I think almost every one of us were there. And we can remember the high level of trust available when Baptist Committed and then eventually Texas Baptist Committed was launched. There was a tremendous level of trust in Winfred Moore, Jimmy Allen, Russell Dilday, Herb Reynolds, John Ball, Charles Wade, and a number of you in the beginning of Texas Baptist Committed. But David took the trust capital handed to him, and you didn't hide it under a bushel. God bless you for that. He built on that high level of trust, if I can find my place, by being a competent leader, showing us how to get organized, and he used his rancher's instinct to gain support across the wide range of Texas Baptist life. He built trust capital by working effectively with leaders in the Baptist building. Now, we don't know everything that David did, but we trusted him and we were glad he did it, whatever it is that he did. And he built trust capital by connecting personally with thousands and thousands of people in Baptist churches. He started with clergy, high-profile lay leaders, institutional leaders, and he moved to build a vast army of Baptist laypersons who joined Texas Baptist Committee. He met them. He wrote them. He saw them at meetings and conventions. He called them by name. Just for comparison, we could say, and I'm going to speak in generalities, they admired Dr. Reynolds and other leaders, but they knew David as an organizational leader, and they trusted him. George W. Truett called those folks our plain Baptist people, and our plain Baptist people knew and trusted David Currie. David, I think that's how you accomplished so much in a nutshell. In fact, we all trusted David. And through his effective leadership and the friends he made for TBC, he earned and deserved that trust. I wanted to say a few words tonight about how David has carried the baton handed to him by a variety of people who influenced his life. But I'm going to leave David to put that in his memoirs. I want to briefly just talk about these. Now, David, when you do that, we know that you're going to mention your family. Every single last one of them, I'm sure, are going to be in that book. And we love them too. You're going to mention Dr. Reynolds, Mr. Ball, your glorious quartet of Foy Valentine, Jimmy Allen, James Dunn, and Phil Strickland. And I hope that you'll say a good bit about Nat Tracy, whom in my opinion is the least named influencer with the most impact on 2 generations of significant Baptist leaders who've come out of Howard Payne University, David being one of them. David, I want to say this. I think Dr. Tracy would be very pleased to see in your life the authenticity, the love, the unrelenting service, and let's just say grace and truth that comes from God. So David, as you open new chapters in your life, go with our blessing and that of many, many other people. We thank you for your faithful service and your leadership. And we thank God for the gift of David Currie.
How do you follow that? Thank you, Ron. My wife is keeping me on track here, and I think a loose paraphrase of what she just said is, you're going to lose your audience if you don't give them a minute to go get dessert. So you don't want to take a couple of minutes if you're wanting dessert. I think it's right over there. Yeah, I know that was a loose paraphrase. If y'all want to take a couple. It's interesting that what Ron has just said kind of dovetails a little bit with what I'm going to say. It's interesting how that works out. And I'm a writer and editor, so I'm constantly rewriting, and so that's what I'm doing right now. Except I'm doing it on my feet instead of with a pen. But it's interesting what he said about looking around the room and the people who were there. In the '90s, Joanna and I were at a church that was gradually going more and more towards fundamentalism. I was the pest in Sunday school, trying to, when the subject would lend itself to it, I would try to bring up some of these Baptist issues. I would usually get blank stares. I came to some TBC meetings, met David I think one time, but didn't really get to know him, didn't get involved a lot back then in the '90s, but saw what happened and everything, and I was trying to fight the battle in my own church. And it was lonely, and I'm sure there are a lot of people around this state who fought similar battles, and you can say the same thing, that it was lonely in their churches because People didn't understand. They didn't want to understand. They didn't care, you know. And so it was tough. But I asked to say a few words not about David and the lady, because that's my story. But it's a little later than some of these, because it really dates from about 2000, when I started really getting involved in Baptist life outside my own church. From the many laypersons I've met at TBC meetings, BGCT meetings, and the like, it's apparent that I'm just one of hundreds of laypersons whom David Currie has encouraged and helped to get involved in Baptist life over the years. I can't tell their story, I can only tell my own, but in a way I think it's probably their story too. There are many of you in this room who have been friends and encouragers to me over the last 10 or 11 years. And I'm grateful to every one of you. I could never adequately express how much that's meant to me. I can only say thank you. But there's one encourager who has had by far the greatest impact on my journey into and through Baptist work, and that's David Currie. And let me tell you why. My friendship with David dates back to a letter I sent him in the fall of 2000. A few months earlier, I had sent a letter to the pastor of the church where we had been longtime members. We'd been there by that time about 13 years. And I was challenging him on actions that were obviously moves toward fundamentalism. He was saying things like, we want a task force to reevaluate our relationship with the BGCT, and things like this. Over the next 4 years, that pastor and I continued to clash until in the summer of 2004, Joanna and I finally decided it was time to leave. It was through another of my encouragers, my dear friend and David's best friend, Phil Strickland, that we found Wilshire and joined here, and thank God for Phil Strickland sending us in this direction. But back to 2000. That fall, I wrote David Currie telling him about the situation in my church, and enclosing a copy of the letter that I'd sent to the pastor. David, at that point, didn't know me from the man in the moon, as we used to say, but he soon got in touch with me, and we began talking regularly. David has since been responsible, either directly or indirectly, for every opportunity I've had to serve in denominational life. All I ever wanted was a chance to contribute, to serve Christ the Baptist way. In 2001, David told me about Texas Baptist Laity Institute mentor training. I attended the training and taught a couple of courses several times. One was church history. The other, my favorite, was Baptist heritage and distinctives. Anybody that knows me knows that that would be my favorite. That experience forced me to study Baptist history and principles in greater depth than ever before. In early 2002, Ray Vickery at Royal Lane called me to ask if I'd be interested in serving on the executive board. Now, I have to make a confession here. And this is really embarrassing because there are a lot of BGCT people in the room. Charles Way is right here. And it's very embarrassing to make this confession, but I actually asked him, what executive board? That's how much I knew about Texas Baptist life. Ray said the BGCT executive board. And then I asked the second question. I said, how in the world did you get my name? The answer, David Currie. I served a 3-year term and had experiences like voting to offer a safe haven to missionaries who had lost their place in the SBC after being required to sign the 2000 Baptist Faith and Message, and voting to begin endorsing chaplains after the SBC Chaplains Commission ceased endorsing ordained women as chaplains. I got to hear Charles Wade speak at every executive board meeting, and it was a blessing. I got to hear the president speak. My favorite, it still stands out to me, my favorite was when Bob Campbell delivered a simple message entitled, I Love Church. I'll never forget that. It was great. But I never would have had those experiences if not for David Currie. During those 3 years on the executive board, I began building new relationships in Baptist life and learning about how Baptist work gets done. In January 2006, I was talking with a friend in the foyer of Park Cities Baptist Church while waiting to enter the sanctuary for Foy Valentine's memorial service. Foy was one of my encouragers too, except his brand of encouragement was the typical Foy candor. We had met for lunch back in 2003, and I wanted to share with him what was going on, my frustration in my church. And Foy said, "You'll never convert that preacher." As usual, Foy was right. I gave up the battle about a year later. But as I stood in that foyer waiting for Foy's memorial service, I saw David Currie walk to one corner of the foyer and motion me over. When I got over there, David said, "If you'll take it, the TBC board voted yesterday to elect you as a member." Here was David Currie again, making sure I had an opportunity to serve. Then David quite unintentionally afforded me another opportunity, if you want to call it that. In the fall of my first year on the TBC board, he sent an email to the board that, how do I put this delicately, was rather grammar and spelling challenge. Imagine that, David Currie. Now, I'm a writer and editor by trade, and I'd done a little editing for David a couple of years before that. So I emailed David and I said, "David, in the future, you really need to send this kind of stuff to me first and let me look it over. Please. Be careful what you ask for." Before I do it, I'd become David Currie's editor.
I'd lost Phil.
But one of the best compliments I ever got was during a TBC board conference call one time. And David said, Bill is doing what Phil used to do. He'll say, "David, you can't say this, you can't say that." And I thought, be compared to Phil Strickland, especially with David, with how I know David felt about Phil, I'll take that in any regard. One of the best compliments ever. So I became David Currie's editor. I have received many expressions of sympathy for that over the years, but in truth it was a joy and I miss it. In January 2007, David wrote the first of more than 100 editions of the Rancher's Rumblings, and I edited every single one of them, some more than others. It was a challenge, but it was fun, because David consistently came up with the most interesting subjects, and often very interesting titles, such as Real Baptists, Crazy Goats, and Lessons Learned. Thoughts on Elvis, and CBF. And my favorite, Seeing God in a Life of Skunks, Diesel Baths, and Barn Apartments. But there were the poignant ones as well. The Heart of Charles Wade. Herbert Reynolds, my hero. And Missing Phil. In January 2008, at David's recommendation, the TBC board asked me to take over responsibility for all TBC communications. Then last year, as our board was meeting regularly to discuss how to move forward following David's retirement, David got in touch with Michael Bell, who had become our chair, and said, "One thing you need to do is make sure Bill Jones is involved in some way." Michael and I had worked closely together on several initiatives in recent years, and Michael knew well my passion for TBC's mission. It's mutual. Michael is the person to whom I've turned repeatedly over the past 3 or 4 years when I believe something needed to get done. So David's encouragement was all Michael needed. Michael and the board soon asked me to become Associate Executive Director. Finally, one other place in Baptist life that I found is I was elected 3.5 years ago to membership on the T.D. Maston Foundation Board. And I have a legacy with that because my dad was one of Dr. Maston's doctoral students, and my dad started the Maston Foundation. It was his vision. But that's not why I got elected to that board. I got elected to that board because of my service through the Lady Institute, the BGCT Executive Board, and the TBC Board. All through that man sitting there. All along the way, it's been David Currie, believing in me, working with me, and seeing to it that I had a place to serve. My story is the story of hundreds of laypersons who have found places to serve in Baptist life because David Currie believed in them and helped them make the right connections. Texas Baptists are richer because of the increased involvement of the laity, just as Ron was talking about a while ago. And David Currie's investment in so many people has been key to that involvement. So David, my dear friend, on behalf of all the laypersons who go along, many, many thanks.
Bill, I need to ask, was everyone told they had 4 minutes? Was I told 4 minutes so that I'll tell you,
We're having a good time, Phil.
well, I'm having a good time. And it is time that we have this lunch. I guarantee you, I was thrilled when I got the word that you were planning to do this. And I volunteered before anybody asked me. I said, I want to be there and I want to say something. So I'm glad you allowed me the opportunity to do that. I speak too for Bill Brewster, who could not be here. He's another one of those whose life and whose commitment to all the things that have drawn us here this evening shaped his life and shaped his ministry. And he remembers the night, David, that you called him at 11:30 and said, David had been working for us part-time for about a year, maybe about that, and said, Bill, I love doing this. And there's enough work here for me to do it full-time. Do you want me to do that? And Bill said, yeah, David, that'd be great. And if you could raise the money to pay your salary, we'd be glad for you to do it. And David did, and so he wound up, well, there was enough to do. It was. Bill, the reason a lot of people don't want to understand what you found with people, it's the same thing in politics, it's the same thing in every critical issue of life these days, has been for a long time. People don't want to know too much because then they have to make a decision.
Right.
They have to do something. And as long as they can pretend that it really doesn't matter and there's just a fuss going on and both sides are the problem and they can see problems here and problems there, and they don't want to analyze the difference, because if they do, they have to take sides. And most people really don't want to take sides. And one of David's great gifts to us has been that he knew which side he was on early on, and he pushed people with information and with expectation and with a passion to make up their mind and show up and vote. And we are who we are today because of that conviction in him and in many others. One of the things that we did early on in Baptist Committed Life was, thankfully in Texas, we knew something about what fundamentalism did. We had the memory of J. Frank Norris, and a lot of lay people knew that. And so we had something to help people understand. We had Baylor University's help, and we had the help of many other of our educational leaders. But when we said to people, if you like what's happened to the SBC during the 80s, if you like what's happened to them, you'll love what they have in mind for Texas. And we weren't just making stuff up. We knew what the agenda was. They told us what their agenda was. Now that they had taken control of the SBC, they wanted control of the Baptist Standard, Baylor University, and the BGCT. In fact, as most of us know, Paul Pressler thought when he started his campaign to get control of the SBC, that would give him control of Baylor here. That was his goal all along. And it wasn't until he was about halfway through it that he realized Baylor was not an SBC institution. And that's when they decided that they had to go after the state conventions, and especially Texas. We had a meeting in which we gathered pastors and some lay folks together, and we just said to each other, if you like what they're doing in the SBC, you'll love what they have in mind for us. And we sent out this word, don't mess with Texas Page. Because he was the one who set his sights squarely on the BGCT. Now that is maybe difficult information for a lot of people who would like to pretend that there's never been a real issue and that Texas is doing fine and we don't need to be concerned. Well, I am glad that the issues are different now than they were then. We did win the battle. And it costs us, just like it cost the SBC. The SBC is not as strong as it once was. And the BGCT has endured losses because we had to take some stands. But we have been able to maintain, with the help of an awful lot of folks, a good relationship with our institutions. Sometimes, Gary, I think the trustees at Baylor don't understand the difference between the SBC and the BGCT. And I wish they did. I wish they understood how hard we fought for Baylor and how they don't have anything to fear from the BGCT. Sometimes I get the idea they really don't understand. Excuse me for politicking. Well, David, I remember that Sunday when you stood just to my right up on the steps above the baptistry. And I baptized Lance and Chad, and you were there. David's boys grew up in First Baptist Church, Arlington. They were wonderful young men then. Chad's working tonight. He's a football coach, and Friday Night Lights is still going. And he's there, and I know he'd like to be here. But Lance and Rebecca, I'm so glad you're here. You have been such a beautiful gift to Lance and to this whole family. And Miss Currie, I'm so glad you could be here. David's mother's here. She probably shouldn't be here, but she's never failed to be there. At every 6:30 breakfast, she has been there. And Loretta, thank you for your steady, stalwart support. It's not easy. I can tell you, not just for you, David, but for everybody, every leader, whether it's a woman who takes that role or a man who takes that role, the spouse pays the biggest price. And I thank you for your support and encouragement and encouraging him in what he did for us and for Texas Baptists and for the Baptist movement. Well, Rosemary is the one who helps me remember everybody in the family. Carolyn, thank you too. You've been a great help and encouragement. I'm guessing this is your daughter.
Yes, it is.
A niece that I've heard David talk about. He loves his family and he's proud of all of you. So thank you all for being here. And Charlie, cousin Charlie. Hey, Charlie. Good. Did I get everybody? Okay. Well, let me take just a moment longer to talk about the beginning. Winford Moore was preaching a revival in our church in Arlington, in 1985. This was the spring. He was going to be nominated in Dallas to be the president of the SBC. And we were talking and visiting, and we decided to have a press conference. Judy Battles helped us put it together. All the people were involved. We invited pastors from all over Texas to come, and we talked about Winford Moore and wanted the whole country to know we believed in him. There were ridiculous rumors over in Alabama and Georgia that Winford Moore did not believe in the virgin birth. You know how all of that went on. And so we had a meeting, and Baptist Committed really got started. It wasn't Texas Baptist Committed yet, but it was Baptist Committed, and we weren't so public at that time. We were informal, and we didn't have a leader or anything, but Phil Strickland was right there, and right now I give a word of appreciation to Bill Pinson, because Pinson knew everything that Strickland was doing, although he gave him the freedom to do the work, which was all he could do, and I am grateful to God that he did. And Ed Schmeltikoff was Phil's right arm, and they worked out of the building to help make an awful lot of things happen. Well, that happened. We kept meeting, kept working at it. And then it was in 1985 in September, Bill Brewster's the one who knows the dates, that we got together and put Texas Baptist Committed kind of in place. Dick Maples, Bill Brewster in the West, and me in North Texas, and we divided the state. We didn't have David to help us. 27 zones, 9 apiece. And we called every pastor we could find in those regions, encouraging them to be at the convention, SBC, as well as Texas. And we tried to explain, we tried to help people understand the importance of the role. A little later, Neil Rogers came to work, and Strickland got him involved, and we had some financial resources. And after 2 years of part-time work, he went on to go to law school, and we found David because Phil was your friend, and he knew what you could do. Now, Bill Brewster believes that we went out and raised $50,000 apiece to get it going. I don't have a clear memory of raising $50,000, but Brewster does. He got some guys at the church in Abilene, and he got $50,000, $5,000 from 11. He said he got 55. I don't know if that's true. He hadn't always told me the truth, but it's a good story. And the best part of the story is that a fundamentalist pastor out there saw all those deacons meeting, and he saw Brewster, and he called Brewster because he talked to one of the deacons, and the deacons said they were meeting because they wanted to get rid of Brewster. And that guy called Brewster on the phone and said, "I'm so sorry. Maybe you'd like to be, I'd be glad to recommend you to a good church." And Brewster had to bust his bubble and tell him what had really happened. So those were some of the background things. And I served as president of Texas Baptist Committed for 2 years, and then Bill took it over. And then others have come and have led. And now, Michael, you stand on the shoulders of an awful lot of people, and you've done it well. And we are grateful. Clyde was one of those. We've had a good time. And through all the difficulties we've been through, one of the things that always encouraged me when I was disappointed in some people and disappointed that we weren't able to win the battle in the SBC, I gave thanks to God, because if it hadn't been for this, there are an awful lot of people, including many of you in this room, that I never would have known.
Getting close to passing away. I told my dad that I wanted to pray with him before he died, because Phil was the greatest man that I had ever known. And my dad looked at me and said, you know, a lot of other fathers would be disappointed that you would say that, but not me, because quite frankly, Phil was the greatest man that I knew. And, you know, I've gotten a little older since then, not too much older, but a little bit. And I realized platitudes like, thinks who's the greatest man ever, they're kind of hard to define and quite frankly aren't definable at all. And so I will back away from my statement a little bit and say that the competition between them is still going. And if you know my dad and Phil's relationship, quite frankly, the competition was more important than the victory anyway. My first digression will be, you need to ask my dad about being Joe Cool. I think at one point in time, my dad thought it'd be a good idea to take a macho picture of himself. So he dressed up in something and had a picture taken and signed at the bottom, Joe Cool, and mailed it to Phil. Then Phil, of course, being Phil, took a picture of himself with his leg up on the table and his shirt unbuttoned to his navel, chest out, and said, Joe Cooler. But I think about both of those men. I think about what made Phil so remarkable, and quite frankly, what makes my dad so remarkable is the ability to overcome adversity. And I'll also preface, I've cleared most of these topics with him, so we'll talk about him. But my dad has overcome so much to be where he is today. And I thought about what it takes to do that, and it takes three things. Here's my outline. It takes drive, it takes talent, and it takes love. My dad has more drive than anyone I have ever met. There are just some people who just get stuff done. Floyd Valentine's phrase that my dad would repeat probably once a week when I was growing up is that there's a difference in making noise and getting something done. My dad could get something done. And I'll shift into sort of the first story about overcoming adversity and getting something done, which isn't Baptist related, but it tells me so much about who my dad is. All of you, or most of you, know that my dad is divorced and remarried to a Beretta who is absolutely amazing. And I have later on to talk about how much patience you must have, but I can go ahead and do that now. We have an amazing amount of patience. But in the mid-'80s, my dad was a divorced Baptist preacher. And in the mid-'80s, that means that he probably wasn't a Baptist preacher anymore. And I'll talk a little bit about the kind of father he was through that. We're all very close to my dad. My brother and I are very, very close to my dad. Probably very few of you know that no matter where Dad worked until I was old enough to drive, every 2 to 3 weeks, again, wherever he was, he would drive and pick my brother up and take us to the ranch so that we would participate and learn what it's like to grow up in that kind of life. And so that's when I tell people where I'm from, I tell them I'm from Rock, Texas, because that's where I'm from. That means my dad drove 8 hours on Friday and 8 hours on Sunday, every 2 to 3 weeks for 13 years, just so that he could be with us. And that's an amazing commitment. And it shows that even though he had come to a point in his life where, for things in his own control, not decisions that he had made, he had run into a major roadblock, he would not let that keep him from being a good father, and would not let that keep him from being a part of our lives. And that kind of drive, that kind of commitment, really explains who he is. I promise you it's just because I'm sick. And so what does that drive look like? I think it looks like an openness and willingness to overcome. And it also looks like the work ethic necessary to make it happen. And that is who my dad is. In the mid-'80s, here he is, he's working at the ag department. I think they asked him at one point in time, he just started at 5, 3,
6 to 8 a year.
So he needed to start 6 to 8 farmers markets a year. He started 50 in his first year. That's who he was. And yet, even though his path that he thought he was on, that he thought God was leading him toward, was not where it was, he remained open to listen. And sure enough, the opportunity arose through his relationship with Phil at a minimum, and with many of you in this room, to start working with Oida. I forget Oida's last name, but Oida with Baptist, ultimately, thank you, with Baptist Committed. And I remember I don't know where you in San Angelo when you started or not, I don't recall, but I do recall the little shack behind the house, which is your office. It had this, I don't know how old I was, so my perception of how large the room was is probably off, but it sure seemed like he could basically type here and turn here and get stuff out of his files and then come back. It may have been a little bit bigger than that, but it wasn't much bigger.
Had no windows.
No windows. So, and the Texas, he would sit in there and work and type and count votes and the other things that have been talked about today. We talk about his work ethic, the tireless hours that he put into this work, the immense amount of travel that he did. I wrote down, because I asked him right before we started here what one experience was like. He told me one week was, he started speaking in San Marcos at noon. He then went to San Antonio Monday night. He then spent the night in Hillsboro, and then he spoke in Paris, Texas at the next noon. I forget what day we are on now, but you're getting the point. He then goes to Sulphur Springs Tuesday night. So he went to 4 cities in about 24 hours, it looks like. Then he flew to Nashville for 2 days. Then he landed, spoke in Fort Worth, and went home. And that was his life for years, as we were in the middle of that battle. And so, again, the first thing that my dad has that I think is necessary to accomplish the things that he's accomplished is drive. The second is talent. My dad was very good at his job. He is incredibly good at his job. And every year I loved going to the convention. And what I recall more from the convention than the speakers, though the speakers were wonderful, was standing in the back of the room as we plotted, sounds like a bad word, but it's not a bad word, but we strategized, we talked, we thought about how's the best way to convey a message, how's the best way to get people excited about something that they need to be passionate about. And man, those are smart conversations. Listening to Phil and Dad talk and try to figure out how to convince people what it means to be a Baptist and how to preserve that. And so I absolutely loved going to that. But he was good. You've asked what he does. He trades in influence. I don't know. He trades in trust, I guess is the best way to put it. And he counted votes. I mean, he would be so on sometimes, their jaw would drop whenever he walked in a room. He knew exactly what was going to happen when. And he just had got stuff done. An amazing organizer. I'm not sure there were very many people, certainly not very many people who spoke that he didn't know. I mean, he knew everybody that went to the convention for the most part, or at least somebody from every single church. And he had some relationship with them in some way. And he was able to use that to get done what he done. But he just was incredibly good at his job. And we've said it in many different ways. I think we've had others use the word ethos. I'm from West Texas. I don't need to use fancy words like that. But Texas Baptists would not be free before my father.
Amen.
It wouldn't be. My favorite verse, or one of my favorite verses, is Galatians 5:1. Is for freedom Christ has set you free. And so I thought of that verse as I was thinking about this, and I thought about also the famous speech from Truett that tolerance is a gift from man, freedom is a gift from God. My dad is a champion for Christ, for freedom. That's what God put him here to do. And he took that mantle and he ran with it. The last thing I wanted to say, besides talent, is love. I mean, he was passionate about this work. Next thing I had on my list was Michael Bill's story. I've stolen my thunder a little bit, but I'll tell it from my perspective. We were, I'll never forget that moment. It was you all know, it was the first time that an African American was running for president. And he was being opposed. I don't think the man, I know the man well, I still love the man and have a great deal of love for him, but I don't think it was any other reason that had anything to do with Michael. But still, the optics were terrible. The first time that an African American runs, the first time we had a competition in a long time. And they crossed each other in an alcove going into the room. I think Dad was walking out, Michael was walking in, or may have been vice versa. But the tears streaming down my father's face, it's just a look I'll never forget. I mean, people think of my dad as the bull of the china closet type, and that just wasn't really who he is. I mean, he did all of this out of love. It had nothing to do with. Well, may have a little bit of ego. He does like himself a little bit. I can say that. But he did all this out of love. And because he loved being a Baptist so much, and instilled that in everyone he was around, and I will actually go back and tell a story about those car rides, those 8-hour car rides. That was my training unit. I'm one of probably the only people in my generation who knows what training unit is, which I'll talk later, is an absolute tragedy. But we would talk about why he was doing what he was doing, and why it was important, and we would talk about faith, and we'd talk about life and school and everything on those 8-hour trips. So send Eric Nadell and the Rangers in between commercial breaks, talking about freedom. But he absolutely loved what he did, and he loved it because it was important. Again, I've been trained to be biased, but in my view, freedom of conscience is the greatest gift that God has given us. And we have to fight hard not to squander it, and Dad made that fight. So this is a good point in my presentation. I'm near the end to say that while the battle has changed, we talked about that some. And maybe people don't like terms like battle, but that's ultimately what it is. It's no less important. It's just changed where it happens. And I hope all of you, when you go back to your churches today, it probably doesn't need to be said in this room, but it probably needs to be reminded that you go back to your church and commit to reminding people what it means to be a Baptist. In my view, every single church ought to have a class kind of like training union. I mean, you ought to have a Sunday school class where before you turn 18, someone's told you why you're a Baptist. I mean, most people don't have any idea. 18 years old, have no clue what it means to be a Baptist and why we are the way that we are, and why we made the decisions that we have. And I think that's sorely lacking in our churches, and that's why the fight has gone the way that it has, where people keep saying, why is this important? Well, no one has talked to them why it's important. And so I hope all of you will commit to doing that. The last thing about love I want to say is that my father loved all of you a great deal. Loves all of you. You do speeches like this one still alive. It sounds like a eulogy. It's not a eulogy. He still here. He still loves all of you a great deal. But I mean, he was as committed to doing this because God put people in his life that inspired him as much as he was able to inspire them. You cannot talk about my father without talking about Phil. You can't talk about him without talking about Dr. Reynolds, Mr. Paul. I mean, that's who my dad is. And so he loved you all very much and loves you all very much. And I believe that God is going to twist his arm and make him do something else in Baptist life fairly soon. So we'll see what happens. So I wanted to just end again by thanking everybody. This is where having him out. I'm thanking you, Lorena. We talked about perseverance, stallness, patience is so right. If you know my dad, probably patience is so right. So thank you for your immense amount of patience and for your love. My dad, I want to thank you. I don't know if you're the greatest man I've ever known, but you're certainly my hero. So thank you. Thank you for all of your work, and thank you for being my father.
Several years ago, David, along with a number of people in the state, some who are in this room, urged me to be a nominee for president of the VGCT. And I resisted like crazy. I didn't want to do it. I was very reluctant, primarily because I knew the focus would be on the fact that I was a woman, not on the fact that I was a missions leader. But David is very persistent. I'm sure that comes as a surprise to most of you. And I did finally consent after really working through it to think, number one, could my love for missions help Texas Baptist focus on missions? And then number two, women have been such a significant part of Texas Baptist life. Wasn't it long overdue for one to become the president of the VGCT? So David, thank you for persisting and pushing as only David can do. I'd like for you to join me here if you would. I get to push you a little bit. When the plan planning committee asked me if I would make this presentation to David, I said, I will be honored to do so, but you need to know there have been times when I would have bonked him over the head with the plaque. And that is the truth. But this is the presentation, presented to David R. Currie by the Board of Directors and staff of Texas Baptist Committed, with grateful appreciation for your service for over 2 decades as Executive Director of Texas Baptist Committed, in keeping Texas Baptists free from fundamentalist control and for defending our Baptist heritage in the name and the spirit of Jesus Christ. Presented to you, David, August 26, 2011.
This is one of the most difficult things I've ever had to do. I actually Phil told me early on that this would be successful if we didn't care who got the credit. And I do have an ego, but I actually do think I did that. I really did. And I did because I felt called to it and it was fun. And I'm very competitive, and I got to beat somebody. And that was real important. And I really did. I'll never forget Leon Macbeth calling me when he was writing his Texas Baptist to where the E&E committee came from. And I told him, I really don't want to talk about it. I didn't really, and I'm not sure about that book, Ron. I just don't know how much of that I want to talk about. But thank y'all for doing this. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to my family. Obviously, very much. I'm thrilled that Mother could come at 94. She did faithfully come to every convention. She went to Washington with me. She went to CBF meetings with me. Loretta would go to Texas Baptist meetings faithfully. And she would look me right in the eye and saying, no, I'm not going to Orlando. No, I'm not going. And so Mother would go to those things. 2 or 3 quick things I do want to mention. Carolyn and Betty Ross are here. They helped with every breakfast forever. And they and Bill Jones and a couple of other lay persons. We had great key leadership from pastors, but by being a public organization, we did have so many lay people come forward. And y'all didn't get to know all those people like I did. Lance is right. I could go to the convention and I knew nearly everybody. Benny King. Y'all don't know Benny King from Sonora? Benny called me Monday night. He's 80-something. Tell me how thrilled he is. Their new pastor started Sunday. He went to Truett and graduated from B.H. Carroll. And y'all don't know Benny, but there are hundreds of Bennies across the state that helped us do what we did in Texas. Just so many of them. And one of my favorite stories about how we did what we did was when Gerald McBride was pastor and we had the Cooperative Giving Study Committee. And I talked to Ron Ellison, and Ron said, we don't have votes. And I talked to Franklin Bass, who's going to be with the Lord, Hal's dad. And Franklin said, we don't have the votes. And I said, Franklin, Phil and I named the dang committee. We have the votes. We sat down and listed to make sure we had 11 of the 18 that we knew, because we didn't want to have Cooperative Program A and Cooperative Program B. That's what some wanted in 1994. Hope this isn't in the press, I hope. But anyway, I said that's a white watered fountain and a colored water fountain. And we don't want that anymore. We don't want separate but equal. We want one cooperative program and everybody's free to give it the way they want to. And they said, we don't have the votes. Dickens is sitting here, so I sent out a word. We're going to have a conference call with 11 of the 18 committee members. And I said, y'all evidently don't know you're all on the same side. There are 11 of you, there are 18 going to vote. You have the votes. And Dean Dickens made the motion, and Bill Turner seconded, or Bill Turner made the motion, and Dean Dickens seconded. Do you remember, Dean? You made the motion. Bill Turner seconded. They voted, and we had one cooperative program that you could give to anyone you wanted to. Walked out the door. Gerald came back, and he said, we got exactly what we wanted. How did that happen? I said, Gerald, that's what you paid for. Don't worry about it. And I never told Gerald the story. There was a lot behind the scenes, and it was a great deal of fun. But the purpose of it really was to create freedom for everybody. The only time I'm really offended is when someone that ought to know better doesn't understand why we did what we did. We never tried to exclude anyone. We tried to include as many as we could. And part of it was, we did try to have influence, but we tried to have influence for positive reasons. Ed Speltikoff called me one time and said, David, we have the best group of executive board members out of Union Association in Houston we've ever had. We've got all these people from churches we've never had represented before. He said, I just don't know how that happened, but it's wonderful. But how it happened is those folks had sent $25. And they were 65-year-old ladies in Garden Oaks Baptist Church in Houston that had never had an executive board member, and they probably never will again. But she was there, and you could say, well, you rigged it, Currie. Let me tell you, who do you want to be a deacon in your church? Someone that loves your church. Who do you want to be a board member of your university? Someone that loves your university. Who did we need on the executive board of the Baptist General Convention of Texas? People that love the Baptist General Convention of Texas. And that's who these people were. And they came to us and did it. So for that, I'm very grateful and I'm very proud. And I really did have a lot of fun until I lost Phil and Dr. Owens and Mr. Ball. And I should have quit 2 years early. We should have had this dinner 2 or 3 years ago. I kind of hung on because I didn't know what else to do at 55. It wasn't the same. And it's still a fight, but it's not a fight I'm equipped for. You know, right now I'm spraying the hell out of mesquite because I can kill that stuff. And I can go the next week and see I sprayed it and I killed it. And that energizes me. But this namby-pamby, you know, I mean, and what really got me at the end is I tried to be a peacemaker at Baylor, and I'm evidently not equipped to be a peacemaker. Mad at me then. So I was a man for my time, I guess you could say. And Phil's the one that got it for me. I wouldn't have done anything worthwhile in life probably without him. But he believed in me, and y'all believed in me. Sometimes a lot more than I believed in myself. But for that, I'm very grateful. And I loved what we did together. I was just a coach. I had a great general manager and president, Bill, Dr. Reynolds, and Mr. Bob Stevenson. Folks, you know what it's like to have a man that will write you a check and not try to tell you what to do with it? That was Bob Stevenson. The last 5, 6, 8, 10 years of my work, when I had to have $25,000, Bob Stevenson never, ever, ever said no. He just said the check will be mailed tomorrow. And that's an amazing gift of generosity that you have, Bob. Thank you so very much. I could talk a long time, but I just want to thank y'all for this. Thanks for doing this for me and my family. Thank you for giving somebody as much on the edge as I've always been an opportunity to lead and do something constructive. I really had a lot of fun. Thank you very much.
As we prepare to hear from Steve Vernon, I'm so glad I can say it here. I'm so glad that Steve Vernon is where he is at 333 North Washington. that's good news for Baptists, David. And I'm glad that Steve is a friend who picks up the phone and all of that, and he's here, and Don is here. Steve, we're glad you're there. Bob Stevenson not only was, but he is. We're getting ready to honor Bob. Got to go to Norman, Oklahoma.
I'm trying to get that canceled.
But we hope that we can get it, have it, and looking forward to coming up there.
David Wilkinson, Associated Baptist Press is here. Associated Baptist Press that's honoring Bob.
Okay.
That
Okay.
event has not been canceled despite my...
Thank you. I was listening and I didn't hear you say anything to the contrary. So, but we are so grateful for all of the members of our board and all of you. It's been and it is a well-deserved honor, David. It's time to say thank you. And we did not want, we're not going to allow anything. We weren't going to allow anything to prevent us. You've been too good of a friend to Texas Baptist, and we're grateful to God for you. Let me say this, that the fight has changed some. We no longer endorse candidates, we just encourage them. And it seems as though when our convention comes, that those who have been encouraged will not have any opposition. And that's good news. It's good news. Also, we have Jill Farragut, who is on our staff. She's not here, but she's out of South Main. And thank you, Steve, and be sure to let South Main know that we so appreciate her. She's so on it. We appreciate it.
And she makes my job easier. So definitely.
And that's hard to do, Bill. That's really hard to do. Bill is, as you know, such a great gift to us. And we just thank God for all of you. Steve is coming. And it's a good thing too. I also pray for Ron Lyles. Ron is a good guy, and he's a good friend. He's chair of the committee. So,
George, thank you for hosting us. This is a big weekend for Wilshire. This is their 60th anniversary that they're celebrating on Sunday. So he gets to eat all weekend. And it's going to be quite a deal. But congratulations and thank you for hosting us, George. We always appreciate the opportunity to be here. Bill, thank you for your work. The midweek reminder that you send out does the best job of summarizing what's going on in the Baptist life that week than anything around here. And so thank you very much. The fight is not over. Carl and I get stuff sent to us every week. 3 of our major churches in Texas have been really stolen by Southern Baptist of Texas. It's a church-to-church fight these days. And so we appreciate your work as much or more as we always have, and appreciate all that you've done. David, thank you. I serve a free historic Baptist convention because of the work you've done over the last 20 years, and I thank you for that. You said that you were a man for your time. I thought more of Esther, but I don't think she had the mustache for such a time as this. Let's pray together. Father, we thank you for this day. And Father, I thank you for the food, the fellowship, and the memories. And Father, we thank you that you have invested in those in this place the gifts that you have given them to serve you. We thank you for the opportunity to serve. And we pray that you would guide us as we do that. And as Dag Hammarskjöld said at one point, Father, for all that has been, thanks. And for all that will be, yes.